Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers.
And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 132. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Friday, Steelers Nation. Dave, it has been a week of new. It is a new weekend for the Steelers as they get underway their rookie minicamp. It is a new place for George Pickens, a new interview. He spoke with the Dallas media. There is a new Pirates manager. There is a new GTA trailer. There is a new Pope. And so it is a week of new and change. Dave, how you doing?
Happy Friday. Do you play that GTA?
I'm not super into it, but I've been watching 70,000 GTA 6 reaction trailer videos. So I am pumped for the game. Unfortunately, have to wait a little bit, but I'm sure you're all over the GTA scene, Dave.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm all over that. No, I've never played that game. Period. I mean, just I've seen the clips and obviously all like that. I grew up in the wrong time. You kids are all spoiled these days.
We are.
Have all these great video games and graphics and all like that. And I had to grow up with Atari 2600 and Pitfall and five-man football and that looked like robots. And don't fire me up on that. So
could you sound any older right now, Dave, to start the show?
What am I, 57 going on 77 or 87 and all like that. But anyway, an exciting time, football in shorts getting underway today with the rookie mini camp. And we've got the roster out as of probably about 15 minutes ago. So I'm sure we'll hit on that a little bit here and go over some of the names. And we'll talk about a little bit what George Pickens had to say to the Dallas media, as you said. And we'll probably kind of review, see if any of our thoughts have changed on the George Pickens trade.
Let's start with rookie minicamp. Pittsburgh hosting rookie select first-year players and a slew of tryout names, including a couple of veterans this weekend, this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, with a couple open spots on the 90-man roster. We'll see if Pittsburgh adds anybody. So let's start there. Of course, the entire rookie class, the drafted players, the undrafted free agents are in Pittsburgh this weekend. 5 first-year players on roster, or more first-year players and exceptions, not rookies. Yeah, trying to find a good way to phrase that. They are Dominic Davis, the defensive tackle, Stephen Jones, the offensive guard, Cameron McCutcheon, the DB, Doug Nestor, the offensive tackle / guard, and Jacob Slade, defensive lineman. Guys like Jones and McCutcheon were signed to future contracts this offseason. Davis bounced on the practice squad last year. Nestor was on the practice squad for all of last year, and same with Jacob Slade. So that's the list of Steelers currently on roster. The tryout players, Dave, we knew a good number of them based on what got reported out. It's only maybe a handful of names we didn't know, and among the most notable there is Trey Sermon, the running back, former third-round pick of the Colts, the 49ers. He did spend time with the Colts, though. Also, Thomas Perry, the offensive lineman, the rookie from Middlebury, who was a pretty intriguing D3 player who shined at the Shrine Bowl. A couple of the veterans in rookie minicamp this weekend, as Tabor Pepper, I should say, the long snapper who was with, I think, San Francisco for quite some time. So maybe a chance for Pittsburgh to add a second long snapper to the roster.
Yeah, I think, I guess things that probably maybe jump out at you the most, as you said, we had most of the rookies that were coming in for tryout every year. The list includes, the handful that don't get reported. I think, as you mentioned, tell us about Thomas the Tank Perry and how excited you are about that Middlebury product.
Yeah, it's not too often we're talking about Middlebury players, but he's a guy that was the first Middlebury, which is a D3 school, I think, up in the Northeast, to go to the Shrine Bowl and had a good week there and really impressed. And frankly, I'm surprised he's only been a tryout guy. He was in Baltimore's, at least he was scheduled to go to Baltimore's minicamp. I don't know if that was last weekend and he didn't get signed, or Baltimore held it this weekend too, and he just decided to go to Pittsburgh. But for those who know the offensive line guru and trainer Duke Manyweather, he has praised Perry up and down for his work ethic, his strength, and so that's a guy that's a bit undersized, has the obvious competition concerns, but really held his own on that big stage at the Shrine Bowl in Frisco earlier this year. So that's a guy I would certainly be keeping an eye on.
Yeah, and notable, I guess, when you go down the list that you hit on, Trey Sermon being one of the 5 non-rookies invited to rookie minicamp this year. Would Thomas Perry be your leader in the clubhouse as probably probability or to get signed after rookie minicamp?
It's always tough to rank them, but I do like his odds just for Pittsburgh not being the strongest depth-wise with the offensive line and his overall skill set. I think his work ethic will impress. I mean, there were limitations in this game athletically, but that's a guy that I feel like has talent to, I think had this been a different year, because what was unique about the 2025 draft class was its depth in the sense of all the guys that returned to school for 2024 with that COVID exception then came out. Dan Forward talked about they had reports on 600 guys last year who went back to school, and they basically all came out in this year's class. So guys who might have been late round draft picks this year became undrafted free agents, and those who would have been undrafted free agents this year became tryout guys. And I think Thomas Perry falls into that boat. So you never know who could impress, and what these guys do these next 3 days will obviously be the key to getting signed or not. But I think Perry certainly is on the short list of possibilities.
And I would imagine Gareth Warren out of Lindenwood would probably potentially be on that short list, right?
Yeah, another small schooler. I think he'll play tackle for Pittsburgh, and there's weakness at tackle depth for sure. So he's a guy that we actually had a profile on, or Tom Mead did that as part of Steelers Depot's small school week. He is a rookie like Thomas Perry that has some size and athleticism. He's played guard and tackle, I believe most recently at offensive tackle for Lindenwood, which is an FCS school. So also someone to consider.
All right. And did you mention Keith Ishmael? Bounced around a little bit.
Yeah, that's another one of the veterans, one of the 5 veteran tryout players this week, and he is a former 5th-round pick of Washington in 2020, last played with Arizona in 2023, across 13 games, although he didn't play an offensive snap in 2021. He played nearly 400 snaps, and so Pittsburgh could look to maybe, again, offensive line depth seems to be a theme here for Pittsburgh, and with the weakness, when you lose all that Pittsburgh has lost, you have a pretty established starting 5, although there's questions about their performance, what they have to prove with Fautanu and Roderick Jones, McCormick. But what do you have behind those guys? At tackle, it's Calvin Anderson, it's Dylan Cook. At interior offensive line, it's Ryan McCollum, it's Spencer Anderson. There's certainly, I think, room to add there, and so that's why we're kind of focusing on these offensive linemen.
All right, and obviously 15 rookies that will be under contract. 7 of those, obviously, the draft picks. 8 of those undrafted free agents, kind of headlined. I don't know, by Castro and JJ Galbraith out of South Dakota. DJ Thomas Jones, another one we've talked about, fullback / tight end out of South Alabama is another one there. Aiden Williams. I think more than anything, we get confirmation now that Blank Mangelson was one of those ones of the initial undrafted free agents that we had the list of, I believe, of 7 that was announced being signed. And then I think a couple of days later is when it was announced that Blake Mangelson out of BYU was signed. So you got 15 rookies under contract, true rookies, if you will, that will take part in this rookie mini camp this year. You have 2 quarterbacks participating this year. One of those, of course, being Will Howard, and the other one obviously being an invite in Seth Morgan out of New Hampshire as well too. So a lot of eyes with obviously will be on these rookie draft picks, undrafted free agents, and the draft class obviously at the top of that. So I think that's where we stand right now, and going to be interesting to see how several of these guys accept and retain information. I think generally and distribute information is how Mike Tomlin likes to phase this thing.
Yeah, you sound very much like Mike Tomlin, which hopefully we'll hear from him. We certainly will hear from him at some point this
At
weekend. I
least
don't know if
once.
that's I don't know if that's today or maybe
I
on
think
the
it's tomorrow.
conclusion. Okay, but certainly would be curious about a little less curious about his thoughts on the tryout guys and more curious about the George Pickens situations, which I'm sure he'll be offering a comment on. For the tryout guys, there is certainly a local in Pittsburgh flair. You have names like Eddie Faulkner. I think it's the fourth that the son of running backs coach Eddie Faulkner. He's in camp for a tryout, and he's a talented player who had a really good year at D2 Slippery Rock. That's a nickel corner with 4 forced fumbles this past year, and so that can be an impact player for the Steelers potentially. Some other local names, the quarterback you mentioned, Seth Morgan, is from the area. There is Hollis Mathis, who's from my neck of the woods out here in Penn Hills. A couple of Pitt guys, and Nate Matlack, the edge player, and PJ O'Brien, the safety. And so, yeah, there is certainly a lot of local ties in this mini camp, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, how many? Let's see, 45. I think they're saying number of players on the rookie minicamp roster this year.
Yeah, it is 5 veterans currently on roster, 15 rookies, and 25 tryout players. I'll have a post in the morning that breaks down each tryout name just to give you some quick background information. But again, we knew about probably more than half that list before it was released by the team on Friday morning.
All right, and with rookie mini camp now getting underway this weekend, we expect a slew of the draft picks to come to terms with their contract. I will be pretty surprised if at least five. I'll say this: at least 4 of the 7, I have a feeling will be under contract by the time Monday morning rolls around. There's really no reason that that number shouldn't be a little higher than that. We're already seeing some first rounders around the league this year come to terms with their fully guaranteed contracts. I don't imagine where Derek Harmon was picked that there's going to be much of any discussion about things to have to sew up on that one. The Steelers don't have a second round pick this year, and already we've seen I think one second round player agree to a fully guaranteed contract. So that line in the sand keeps moving there. But obviously, after Derek Harmon, the next pick was Caleb Johnson, and that's a third rounder. I would think it would take too long to get him under contract. So I'm going to go out on a limb that say by Monday, at least 5 of the 7 draft picks will be under contract, and it probably won't be too shocking if you get all 7 of them done, be honest with you.
And the 5 that you think would be signed are the later round guys. You think maybe the exceptions will just be Harmon and then maybe Caleb Johnson, or maybe
Yeah,
just
I would think everybody after, Jack Sawyer, Wyatt Black, Will Howard, Carson Bruner, and Dante Kent. I mean, without a doubt, you would expect Kent and Bruner to both sign. I I can't imagine with Will Howard being a 6th round pick, there'll be much to talk about there. And really the same with Wyatt. So that's at least, yeah, I don't know, maybe an agent can't get around to doing something for one of these guys could potentially be a holdup. But the fact, I think the main fact here is that you don't have a second rounder to deal with and have to worry about that line in the sand as far as the full guarantees go. I imagine maybe with the 3rd round pick and Caleb Johnson, there could be discussion with how much of the second or the 3rd year, is guaranteed, and maybe that would pose a problem there. But at the very least, I think Sawyer, Black, Howard, Bruner get under contract.
I know it's just football in shorts, and we're not there personally this weekend, and this is really all introductory and lay the land and getting these guys on the field for the first time. But is there anything you're hoping to hear about, either from the players themselves or reports on any of these guys in camp? Is there anything you're looking for over these next 3 days, Dave?
I'm ready to ride the Will Howard experience. That first and foremost, you got a young quarterback. Really have enjoyed watching his tape so far, what I've gone through and the contextualizations, and such an important position. And I think that headlines it for me. Other than that, I just, yeah, Look, there's going to be a lot of positive to come out of this, and we're going to we'll pass along what reports come out and interviews and everything that comes along with that. I guess the other thing would be how many of these tryout players end up getting signed. Usually we have one or two of those every year that happens, and how healthy can these guys stay? Let's get through this thing without any serious injuries. But yeah, I obviously want to hear about the draft picks and particularly Will Howard, and just looking forward to seeing any of these tryout players getting signed.
Yeah, I think Howard might be the name that gets talked about the most because what he does is just frankly the most visible thing that any rookie probably can do. For a running back, a little harder to gauge when it's a non-padded, non-tackling situation. Obviously, no receiver was drafted. There's the undrafted guys, obviously, and they'll get some love and some press potentially, but the focus will probably be on Will Howard because it is so obvious to talk about how well he's throwing the football, how accurate he looks. And I think in a setting like this, Dave, when it's a bunch of young guys overall, who's going to lead? Who's going to lead these 3 days? And Will Howard has a great chance to be that leader. And I think he's got really good leadership qualities. And he's no stranger to having to come in kind of cold and lead, transferring to Ohio State this year, 1 year on the fly, having to earn trust and become a leader and build all that up in a really accelerated process. And so, obviously once OTAs start, mandatory minicamp begins in June, you have the veterans in, Howard's not going to have that top shelf leadership role. But I think in a situation like this, someone has to command the huddle and run the show. There's two quarterbacks in camp, Howard and the tryout guy, Seth Morgan. It's a real big opportunity for Howard to kind of flash that leadership quality that I think he has.
Who is the most intriguing wide receiver in this year's rookie minicamp? A lot of talk about Rock Taylor out of Memphis, one of the undrafted free agents. Keyshawn Williams out of Indiana, a little bit smaller guy, I believe, at 5'9", 186. And then you look at a couple of these guys I don't know anything about with the tryout players. O'Marion Dollison out of James Madison. Montana, Lamonius Craig out of Arizona. I think I might have seen a clip or two on him throughout this process. Hollis Mathis, obviously, out of William and Mary. I think we already had him on the list as being an invite, but not a lot of wide receivers here this year.
Yeah, it looks like just 5, right? The
Yeah.
2 uh, undrafted free agent signings and the 3 tryout players. So, yeah, I mean, it's obviously a smaller group overall. It's not like you're carrying your usual 90-man group that they'll have a little bit later this month. I think Rock Taylor's the most interesting name, somebody who I thought was potentially draftable, combine invite, ran well, was productive his last 2 years at Memphis, had about 1,000 yards each season, has some size. I think a report on him we wrote post draft was pretty positive overall. So the most obvious name to talk about, I'm sure, but I think one worth mentioning. And then to talk about the tryout guy, Hollis Mathis. He was a guy that did everything at William and Mary. He played quarterback, he played running back, and finished up his career at receiver. So kind of a true athlete in every sense of the word. And someone I think will probably get some attention for also being that local native, that Penn Hills kid that's coming back home.
All right.
Just real quick, I'm just kind of scanning over the tryout list one more time, and this is us being very nerdy, and it's not going to probably matter a whole lot overall. But Max Hurlman, one of the 25 tryout names, who's from the east side of PA, he played cornerback and was a returner at Notre Dame last year, but they have him listed as a running back. He began his college career as a running back at Colgate, and then he moved to receiver, and then moved to cornerback, and really was the primary punt returner at Notre Dame last year. Did not play much on defense. So just a quick note there, I realized they listed him as a running back instead of a cornerback. So just noting that, because there's only a couple of running backs. It's Sermon, it's Hurlman, it's Caleb Johnson, of course, and I think that's all the running backs, correct, Dave?
Trey Sermon, yeah, Herman, Caleb Johnson. That's it, right?
Yeah, so that's
where is Wyoming missing PA?
That is out. Again, I'm the worst at geography, but that is more eastern side of PA. I want to say it's a little bit in the Scranton area, maybe a bit south, but that's the general area I can give you.
All right, and let's see, you got a punter in there, and Fraser Mason out of Brisbane, Australia. Is there a kicker?
Ooh. Oh, no, well, but Ben Sauls, the
Ben
undrafted
Sauls,
free
that's
agent.
right. That's
Yeah.
right. So we got that battery set up, and then their long snapper, I guess, would be they've got Donato Chris Crisani,
Yeah, that's where's he from? He's one of the tryout guys.
New
He
Hampshire.
is
Oh, Rhode
Rhode
Island.
Island, Rhode
Yeah,
Island. Then also Tabor Pepper, the veteran. And
right.
it would not be shocking at all if Pittsburgh did sign up one of those long snappers out of rookie minicamp. They tried to sign the West Virginia kid that was initially reported, and he went elsewhere, who was at Austin Brinkman, I believe was his name, one of the top long snappers in this year's draft. They tried to sign him. That was initially reported by Tom Pelissero right after the draft. Then he went to the Houston Texans on he's got a good base salary guarantee, a partial base salary guarantee. So I think Pittsburgh is trying to look for a second long snapper. We'll see if one of these guys gets signed.
Will Carson Bruner get any long
Ooh,
snaps?
true. He talked
Just
about
to
that,
see what
right?
he can do. Yeah,
Prob Go ahead.
he had talked about how he's trying to see how he contribute any way he can.
Whenever I've seen those guys long snap, it's always kind of been on the side before practice or in the very early moments. I doubt they're going to do a whole lot of that this weekend with Bruner. They got a couple long snappers in to handle those reps, but the more you can do, the better. We've seen guys like Logan Lee long snap, Cole Holcomb's done it, Derek Watt's done it in the past years for Pittsburgh. So it's nice to have in your back pocket. I think for a guy like Bruner, this environment's not going to be ideal for him to really kind of show his stuff as that physical downhill thumper, not being in pads, but you can still kind of get the intensity. And I think he does a nice job getting off of blocks. We talk about guys that are downhill run defenders. That's all well and good, but can you defeat blocks? Can you stack and shed? And I think Bruner can do that well. Harder to show in a situation like this, and probably he's best suited to show his stuff when the pads come on in August when Pittsburgh's a training camp.
All right. Next time we get together on Monday, we'll be wrapping up the minicamp.
We will. We'll talk about any potential players who are signed, and we'll go from there. All right, Dave, let's go now to George Pickens, who met with the Dallas media yesterday, at least for a phone call, and spoke with them and said all the right things. He's excited to be in Dallas to work with Dak Prescott, not focused on contract, not focused on any of the noise, just wants to go to work. And so far, so good with George Pickens in Dallas.
Yeah, I think the main takeaways from all that was reported that he said was that A, he did not ask to be traded. B, he found out he was traded along with everybody else. He kind of mentioned that sort of like when he was drafted. He didn't find out until it actually happened. The last part was him talking about he's not worried about a contract, and it most of the reporting, I think we touched on this briefly the other day. Most of the reporting, like from Jane Slater and some of these veteran beat writers, is that I guess they don't really have any intentions on extending him. That everybody's going into this with the assumption that this is a contract year for him and a chance for him to increase his value. And on the surface, it sounds like everybody's all fine with that. So let's assume, which is dangerous to do, but let's assume that George Pickens is on, uh, lockstep with them of saying, look, I'm not going to be a contract issue this summer. I'm accepting the fact that I'm not going to get a deal this summer, and I'm willing to take my chances with all that and play out my rookie contract. And let's also assume that that was going to be his course of action with the Steelers as well too. How does that? Where does that lead you when we rewind back as to why the Steelers, decided to trade him?
Well, I don't know if that ultimately is going to matter a ton in the decision to trade him. I think the decision to trade him, which I still have certainly mixed feelings on, but it's not hard to understand why he was dealt. He was not getting signed after 2025. He was either going to play out the year in Pittsburgh and leave, or he was going to get traded beforehand. And obviously, the latter occurred. He was a headache. He was difficult to deal with. He racked up hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines over his years in Pittsburgh from the NFL and from the team privately. That's been well documented. That's been well reported. He was volatile and just, you never really knew what you were going to get from him. He's not a bad guy. I want to make that clear. I don't think anyone's saying like he is a terrible teammate and all that kind of stuff and not an off-field concern from a, you know, police criminal standpoint. Nothing like that, but he's just a type A receiver in a very typical receiver sense that, had to still had some growing up to do and still had some maturity to try to achieve. And I think Pittsburgh, apparently Mike Tomlin, according to reporting, was the driver behind this and was the guy who, made this deal basically happen. And that's interesting because Tomlin was often the biggest public defender of George Pickens, constantly going to bat for him whenever he would face criticism and critiques from the media. So if Tomlin's out on you, then that does say something.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go next with this. How much does this boil down to George Pickens is no longer in Pittsburgh because Mike Tomlin says, I can't get through to him. And, I worry about the impact of not being able to get through to him on this team in 2025. Because make no mistake, I understand. Look, we covered this. The whole getting the draft pick now versus getting it next year. And look, there's no guarantee that if George Pickens had played out 2025, there's no guarantee that when and if he was to leave Pittsburgh, next offseason, that you were guaranteed to get a third round compensatory pick. Obviously, you would hope to get at least the value, him sign a mega deal, and then you not offset that with any of your own signings. But there's no, the teams, look how much this team has changed in just this one offseason alone. Look at how really the Steelers, I guess overall didn't go out huge in the free agent market this offseason to offset any of the losses that they had in free agency. But long story short, did indeed Mike Tomlin drive this thing and say, look, we got to get what we can get for him now because I essentially don't want him on this roster this year.
That's what the reporting from Mark Cabali indicated, and we'll hear from Mike Tomlin. Not that he's going to tell you probably a whole lot. He'll just say it was the best thing for the team and whatever kind of platitudes he'll offer and wish George well. But yeah, I assume if Tomlin wanted Pickens to remain a Steeler, he would still remain a Steeler. If Tomlin felt confident he could get Pickens to be in the right headspace consistently where he needed to be, then I assume Pickens would still be with the team. So I know, I listened to Ryan Clark's comments yesterday, and he tried to kind of walk back some initial comments he had made about this is maybe not about Pickens' behavior and this is a football decision. To me, I disagree. This is largely driven by Pickens, the person, and the tardiness. Apparently, he was late to a bunch of stuff, including the Christmas Day game last year, and just not doing things that make you a professional. And that can be sometimes reflected on the field. There were questions and moments about effort and route running, and some of that was certainly valid, but just not being able to lock in and dial in and have that trust of the coaching staff. And that gets you moved on when you're in a contract year. And as you said, there are reasons to get the pick now, even if it is for 2026, as opposed to waiting for the comp pick, which is no guarantee based on your own free agency moves. And Pittsburgh figures to have cap space for this upcoming offseason in 2026. And, they probably will have a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal. And so they'll be able to spend, and those things could cancel out any potential comp pick they would be in line to receive from Pickens had they kept him on roster. So all reasons of why he got moved.
Alex, I know Mike Tomlin has your cell phone number in his phone. All right. So knowing that if when we are done with this podcast, and after Mike Tomlin gets done with this first rookie mini camp practice of 2025, he goes into his phone, pulls your number up, and he calls you for a quick 5-minute conversation. And he says, Alex, Coach T here. Look, I just want to tell you that, this is coming down to growth and development with George Pickens, and essentially can't win with him. I can't get through to him. And that's essentially, I'm worried about the impact on this 2025 team. And that's really the main driver in all this, Alex. And I'll talk to you next week when I call you. Uh, if if such a conversation were to happen, something similar along those lines, how does that change? How would that, if any, change your opinion on the Steelers trading George Pickens for a third round draft pick in 2026, and then the swap that they did in 2027?
The point of contention is not about the mere act of trading George Pickens again. Those reasons are clear and understandable and not shocking in the least. To me, this is really about the timing of it and a little bit on the return. The return's not bad. Is it this overwhelming? You got to get this deal done. It's too good to pass up this offer. To me, that I think we can debate about that, but the timing of post draft, and I know I say it all the time, takes two to tango. If the Cowboys offer wasn't good enough, pre-draft, they were only offering a fourth, whatever the deal was, then certainly you're not entertaining that. But you are doing this here post-draft. It is harder to find replacements. We're in another cycle, just like last year of, oh, they're going to find someone, they have time, and they went through this song and dance last year, and they couldn't make it happen. Are they in the same position this year? And you have, like, my whole thing, Dave, is just,
2025.
well, yeah, that, but just in a broad perspective, this offense has been so poor year after year. Really, 2018 was the last good offensive year Pittsburgh has had. 2020 was decent, but even that was a little more smoke and mirrors. It wasn't truly explosive. And Omar Khan talked about, we got to get playmakers this offseason. And he did. He got DK Metcalf, and hopefully Caleb Johnson will offer more juice to this run game. But you subtract one of your biggest playmakers and offensive talents in George Pickens, and how well can you replace that? I'm just tired of seeing this offense have to lag behind and, finish 16th in scoring last year, which was their high mark, which included 5 straight games of no more than 17 points per game, which hasn't happened since 1969. So even even its best offensive year, statistically, it still wasn't good overall. And you just felt like this was the year where the offense could really elevate itself and be explosive and be potent and have Pickens and Metcalf, and it's going to lighten the box, help the run game. If you do get Aaron Rodgers, you can kind of at least see the vision offensively, and hopefully the defense is able to kind of rebound from the tough stretch to end last year. He would have a good offense, or a good enough, maybe an average to top 12 offense with a top 10 scoring defense, and you have something there. And so that hurts to see that Pickens piece gets replaced, because you felt like you had that chance to really have a playmaking potent offense, which has been missing for far too long.
All right, before Mike Tomlin hangs up with you, you get an opportunity to squeeze in 2 quick questions to him. What are those 2 questions?
I mean, the timing of it, I guess, is just, why post draft? And I'm sure the answer just might be, well, Dallas upped their offer, and that's what we were waiting for, was an offer that was, something about a day 2 pick, getting something like that back. And then just frankly, do you intend to make an additional external signing or trade to fill Pickens' spot, or is there enough confidence in what Pittsburgh has internally, be it Calvin Austin or Roman Wilson? A lot of reporting last couple days, Dave, about this team is high on Roman Wilson, still believes in what he can do, which may signal that they're not going to go out there and rush out to make a free agent signing or a trade. They're going to let Wilson go through OTAs, be healthy, and see how he looks in year number 2. So is the plan to make an additional move, or is it trusting what Pittsburgh has internally to fill the void?
Hopium, right?
Depending on perspectives. I mean, Wilson, we just don't know anything about Roman Wilson, essentially. So I don't want to say that he can't be an impact player. We just don't have hardly any information about him.
Right. I agree. I think with you, it's more about the plan, right? What's the plan, man?
Mm-hmm.
And since in the last, 24, 48 hours, we've seen Ian Rappaport come out and say, I will be surprised if the Steelers don't add another wide receiver now that they've traded George Pickens. And obviously we're not going to rehash it, kind of that short list of names that we went over the other day there. But he says that, and then what did Adam Schefter come out this morning and say?
said the team is confident and comfortable in what they have. Now, is that just team speak? We'll see, depending on if they go at somebody or not. But even that list of names we talked about might have complications. Watson coming off the injury, Gabe Davis officially released, but with a failed physical. So, what exactly is the health of that meniscus he tore last year? Reporting from Peter Schrager, Green Bay is not really itching to trade one of their receivers. Could a deal still happen? I'm sure, but maybe they're not as quick to make a move as we potentially thought Wednesday morning. So are we back playing the connect the dots to every potential receiver for the next 3 months? Potentially.
Possibly, and you hit on we talked about Gabe Davis the other day, and he indeed, as you mentioned, got released with the failed physical designation, which I don't think is too shocking, being as how that meniscus was torn in November, so he's still probably going through the rehab. You mentioned a part by Schrager talking about the Packers. Look, they can't keep all 53 of those wide receivers over there in Green Bay. Somebody's going to be on the out at some point, I think. And then I guess one of the other names we talked about was Alan Lazard. And I'm not a pro at reading into gifts in social media, but one of the gifts that Alan Lazard posted within the last however many 48 hours was that Wolf of Wall Street one of Leo DiCaprio saying, "I'm not leaving." So I don't know. Yeah, he might mean something totally different than that. But as I stated the other day, my hopium, my naiveness, I guess, on the back end of this Pickens trade is that they that Adam Schefter's report is correct. That we're fine, we have confidence in the wide receiver room that we have. I can't believe that to be true at its core overall. Now, maybe is this just a report of them being cool, calm, and collective and waiting to see what might surface on the trade market as other teams get to look at their rookies and we'll see. And there's a lot of time to worry about this, right? Because I mean, this is just rookie minicamp. Obviously you have OTAs, but by the time you don't want also to get into a situation where you're coming up on the trade deadline, looking for a Mike Williams, and then also you'd like to have, especially if whoever the quarterback ends up being, you'd like to have, if you're going to add another veteran receiver, for that receiver to go through training camp, so you're not through the proverbial trying to get it, get on the moving train aspect of it.
When do you think that receiver, if there is an outside addition coming, when should that happen? Before training camp? Is there kind of a soft deadline on when you would like Pittsburgh to add a replacement, if that is going to be their path and intent?
At the latest, by the start of training camp.
How likely do you think that is?
Once again, I'm going to. I gotta think they learned their lesson from last year. I'm hoping it's my naiveness, Alex, I guess, and I know better, but I'm going to say I am fairly confident that they will.
Okay. I think you said it well. The two prongs of my criticism is the timing of the Pickens trade, and then the word that you use and the word I wrote about this morning for the site, the plan. What is the plan for 2025? Is Pittsburgh trying to make that get over the hump playoff push to finally win a postseason game? Is this kind of a delay and let's kind of stockpile picks for 2026 and let that be the year to really start making some moves? So I ask you, Dave, what is the plan? What is the plan for 2025?
I believe the plan is to sign Aaron Rodgers here at some point. I believe the plan is to add another receiver that somehow at least lightens, and I don't think Robert Woods is that guy, and I know you don't either. But somebody that can stretch the field, somebody that can at least prevent DK Metcalf from being, all we got to do is shut down DK Metcalf. Somebody to at least keep them honest on the other side over there. And as we stated, I'm not expecting this to be a 1-for-1 replacement, because you just you're just not going to get there. But can you get 2/3 of a George Pickens, or even what's the next fraction down from 2/3?
Oh, don't make me do math
Is
here.
that five? Would that be 5/8?
Oh, Dave, we're not doing
Uh,
public math here this
I
early on
mean,
the show.
well, you don't have to worry about my math being right when we do that, but you get where I'm coming from there, right?
Yes, but when I ask the question, "What's the plan?" It's less about the details, but is this a team trying to break their playoff drought, or is this a team admitting that, hey, maybe 2025 is not going to be the year like we usually do of like let's go all in and we're here to win now, and we're going to kind of have a soft reset in a sense. It'd be too strong to call it a full blown rebuild just because you trade George Pickens, a guy who was not going to be on your roster next year. That's too weighty, but.
How about this?
Mhm.
A much improved rock fighting team.
But how is it improved if you're trading away a guy like George Pickens? Because the roster, in that sense, well, there's been upgrades elsewhere, and there's areas to watch, grow, and develop. Most notably, the offensive line. But are you really trying to improve your roster if you're trading away one of your most talented offensive players?
Well, I mean, you're hoping that the Pittsburgh Rock Fighters have a better, more cohesive, improved running offensive line. You're hoping that the Pittsburgh Rock Fighters of 2025 have more competent quarterback play, an increase in quarterback play with a veteran such as Aaron Rodgers. You're hoping your running game, which is obviously a byproduct of your offensive line play, is better, and you can produce a few more explosive plays that way. Uh, and yeah, and then the defense no longer gashed against teams that can run the ball effectively. Such was the case against the Baltimore Ravens.
Those things are good and important, and I believe there's been some progress made in that direction. But isn't the whole issue with Pittsburgh that they've just been a rock fighting team, and that gets you to make the postseason, but isn't good enough to win a postseason game? Isn't that the whole problem Pittsburgh's been facing since
Sure.
2017?
But you asked me what I think maybe the plan is now at this point. And I think the plan is we could not have George Pickens in that building, and we're going to try to build a better version of the 2024 Pittsburgh Rock Fighters.
Do you think that's good enough to get a playoff win?
Uh Potentially.
Isn't that what we say every year? Where we just kind of say potentially, but how
Look,
confident of a potentially is that?
no matter what this roster is going to look like, it would have taken a lot for us at this point right now in the offseason to say this is a Super Bowl contending team, right?
Yeah, this isn't about Super Bowl contention. This is about the elephant in the room of not winning a playoff game since 2016. And for a guy like TJ Watt with 0 career postseason wins, Cam Hayward has 1. And the team feels that there's a weight, there's an angst. Remember Rudy's comments last year of impatience about winning a playoff game. I think that does truly weigh on them. They don't want to have this terrible unstealer like streak. And so you question how that comports with trading away a guy like George Pickens.
Right. Sure. Look, I mean, this whole season will be magnified by the trading away, assuming Rodgers comes in and people stay healthy and all like that. This team will be the move to trade George Pickens, especially if he goes on and plays well with Dallas and Dak and ends up being that perfect complement over there to, if that duo of Lamb and Pickens becomes what people were at least hoping to see for one season with DK Metcalf and Pickens, right? Uh, how much did losing one player impact the entire thing? Because that's essentially where we're at right now, right?
In Pittsburgh, you're talking
Yeah.
about losing one player. Yeah. What is the domino effect? You're in the same spot as last year of our team's going to just roll coverage to DK Metcalf, and do you have somebody opposite that can win those one-on-one matchups? And what if DK Metcalf goes down with a hamstring injury like George Pickens did for 3 games last year? Then what does your passing offense look like? And when I talk about playing, it's on one hand, Pittsburgh is pursuing and this prolonged wait for Aaron Rodgers, which we believe was under the assumption of they're trying to win now and maximize his defense and get that playoff win for Cam Hayward and TJ Watt before this defense ages out. And you had Pickens and Metcalf and Rodgers. You had talent there, young offensive line, add a running back. Your offense would be more potent, explosive, just better overall. Your defense gets back to form. You have a great kicker in Chris Boswell. That's the plan to win now. But now on one hand, you're saying, okay, we're waiting on Rodgers to win now. We're also trading George Pickens, which hurts our ability to win now from an on-field perspective. That's where you kind of feel that disjointedness of, okay, what is really the vision and the plan for 2025? What does that look like?
Okay. I mean, a lot of the same stuff that we talked about, the other day in the show, but I get it. I get it. And usually, I'm more on the, I guess, critical side of most things when it comes to criticizing this team. And once again, make sure you remind me of my naiveness. Do you think this team is going to add a wide receiver, Alex, that'll at least be 5/8 or what 3/4 of what George Pickens was bringing to this team, at least to help somewhat alleviate the pressure on DK Metcalf? How convinced are you?
Less than you, for sure. I think Pittsburgh will go through the OTAs and see what they have with Roman Wilson, how he looks. How does Robert Woods look in a Steelers uniform, even though it would be pretty foolhardy to think he's going to be the number 2 receiver. But this team's number 2 receiver was Van Jefferson last year. So who the heck knows what the team's confidence and thoughts might be. So they could, certainly, but I don't know. And I think we're going down the same road of last year. Pittsburgh will look and explore and work the bones, but one thing that receiver to add and getting that guy to add are 2 different things.
All right.
I just asked the question of, is Pittsburgh trying to win in 2025, or are they taking kind of a longer view of, okay, let's really make that push and maybe reset a year and go heavy in 2026? That's kind of the question I have right now, where I can't quite figure out what they're trying to do in 2025. I mean, what I read about this morning was basically, I think Pittsburgh's big picture vision, Dave, is from 2023 to 2025, the first 3 Weidl draft classes together. It's all about trenches, all about building up the offensive line, which we saw in 23 and 24, and then building up the defensive line, the front 7, which we saw in 2025, and then going all in on quarterback in 2026.
And we don't even know who that player is going to be yet. They don't either.
Right. No idea. But that's the plan in a loose general sense. So the idea is after 2026, after that draft, you have your quarterback. You hopefully have a developed offensive line and defensive line. So you're strong in the trenches. You're strong at quarterback. If you can do those things, you're in a really good place to begin truly contending. You fill in the rest in free agency. You have a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract. And so you have money to spend. And so that's kind of the vision. Now they have to develop these guys. The offensive line is such a big critical unit to watch this year. To me, it is the true litmus test of success this year, how well this young offensive line develops. And Harmon's got to play well. You got to find that quarterback. All those things have to happen, obviously, but that is the overall vision of the Eagles' approach of build up the offensive line, build up the defensive line, invest heavily in that, then get your quarterback, and then kind of ride those units from there, I think is the overall plan.
All right, so all the stuff, and look, it does get tiresome. Our goal every year is to win the Super Bowl, and look, every team's going to say that, right? No team's going to come out and during the off season and the start of the season to say, you know what, our goal is to just have a winning record or just make the playoffs, right? No team's going to openly say that. But we've been conditioned, obviously over the years, and here it falls on deaf ears, right?
Sure. And for a team that has not won a playoff game since 2016, it's hard to buy into any notions of they're going to be Super Bowl contenders when you look at the AFC landscape.
Based on the way this roster looks right now, should Mike, and it's a double-edged sword because he seems like he's having a heavy say more so than ever when it comes to building teams and rosters overall. Someone posed out there yesterday that Mike Tomlin should win Coach of the Year if this team makes the playoffs even, I think. Or was it make the playoffs or win a playoff game?
I think it was Chris Long who said that, and I believe he said make the playoffs.
Okay. And Why are you going to give somebody a coach of the year just for something that he's done when that shouldn't even be the bar?
Sure, but I understood the point of
In other words,
Long's point. The
yeah.
roster's worse, and if you still make it work, then kudos to you. We'll deal with all that stuff whenever we just get through the season. I also wrote about Dave. Obviously, it's very easy to talk about 2026 being the year of the quarterback, and yes, we don't know who those quarterbacks will be, but we all know that likely this team is targeting a quarterback in the first round in 2026. Is that fair to say?
Yes, fair.
Here's my concern, and I don't it's a tough it's a tough needle to thread because I don't wanna critique the team for looking for a quarterback aggressively next year. They should. That's what I've said all along. Go big, go home, identify the talent, aggressively pursue him. Look at the teams who are successful. The majority of them have first round homegrown quarterbacks, so it is the right thing to do. But does this team now feel obligated to that they have to take a quarterback in the first round next year? Because if they don't, then like what has all this been for? What is trading George Pickens for a 2026 pick for? What is stacking all those compensatory picks getting you? It will feel, I'm sure, a bit hollow and empty if the result of the 2026 first round selection is a cornerback, even a good one, or a wide receiver, or a left tackle. Even if it's a good player, it will feel like, well, where the heck is the quarterback? This was supposed to be the year for the quarterback.
Yeah, and at that point, you're going to have probably a lot of hopium in a Will Howard, or you were going to go through yet another veteran cast off quarterback.
Right, which you just can't keep doing. There is a breaking point, and with Howard, some of that sheen may wear off. I assume he's not gonna play at all his rookie year, and so you can't go into 2026 touting Will Howard, I'm sure is the answer if he's not taking a single regular
Right.
season snap.
Right. I agree. I mean, this all does seem pointed towards let's hope we can get our franchise quarterback. And even if they get that guy in the first round, how quick are you going to get him on the field? What growing pains you're going to go through? And are you going to be looking at best another just winning season, maybe slide into the playoffs and maybe, not much further?
Sure, having a
But then
rookie
you're looking at
quarterback.
2027 then. So is the Super Bowl window technically probably not opening up to at least 2027 as we sit here right now?
Well, at that point, you wonder what it'll look like because defensively, you've aged out. Cam Hayward's probably gone. TJ Watson is mid-30s. What is Minka Fitzpatrick's status? That was part of the reason why it seemed like Pittsburgh was trying to push their chips in right now to maximize this defense before it does age out, and it needs serious TLC to be replenished. And that's where you wonder why trade away George Pickens if that's going to hurt that cause to win now. But again, Pittsburgh should look for a quarterback next year. They're right to do that, obviously. But I'm always a little nervous, at least when teams feel obligated to do anything in the draft. We have to take this position. We have to get this guy. That's when you make mistakes. That's when you reach. That's when you talk yourself into people. It happened in 2022 with Kenny Pickett. We got to get a quarterback. We got to have a bridge for Ben. I believe Kevin Colbert thought he wants to give a franchise quarterback to his successor. That's why he hung on through the draft that year. It's happening a bit this year. You feel backed into a corner. We have to wait for Aaron Rodgers. We have no choice. It's happened to other positions in the draft in Pittsburgh. Remember with Artie Burns, they were going to take William Jackson. We got to take a corner. We got to get a cornerback. Jackson's gone one pick off the board ahead of them to Cincinnati. And then they take Artie Burns because we got to get a corner. We have to get somebody. And they reach and they make a bad selection there. So anytime you feel like you're obligated to do something, it does, I think, increase the risk of you making a bad decision. And that's just one. There's no way to solve it. It's nothing Pittsburgh can do because they have to pursue a quarterback next year. But it is just one underlying concern I have when it comes to next year's draft.
And the whole conversation about best player available versus draft need and likelihood and yada, all the stuff that we look at pre-draft and all. Quite honestly, the only really one hugely surprised, Dante Kent, obviously at the end, we didn't even have a profile on him, but we were talking about your last seventh rounder, and probably won't be the last time that we get surprised by seventh round selection, I guess, at the tail end of a draft. But Jack Jack Sawyer was really the one that really was kind of off the peripheral vision there, right?
Yeah, that was a value play too for people probably not expecting him to be there in the 4th round, the way that he fell a little bit. So, yeah, whether we all can make sense of why that pick was. But yeah, these are all just kind of the hodgepodge of thoughts I've had in my head the last 48 hours.
All right, what would make you feel better between now and the start of training camp? Adding a receiver in Aaron Rodgers?
I'm not even sure at this point. I mean, Rodgers, is he better than the options Pittsburgh currently has? Yes. Do I think it really just transforms the team? I'm skeptical of that. And, it depends on what receiver they add. I don't know. I'm just kind of taking it. I want to get in training camp, see these guys, see how Roman Wilson looks, and kind of go from there. But it is hard to believe this team is truly building to be a playoff winning team and get that monkey off their back based on a move like trading George Pickens for future capital.
I think big picture kind of takeaway, at least where we're at right now when it comes to George Pickens and the an April, early May plan is we view the dealing of George Pickens as an addition by subtraction, and then we're looking ahead to mucho draft capital for 2026 to get a franchise quarterback.
And that's fair. That's probably a good way to sum it up. I just feel like it's a franchise, and there's always nuance and layers, and you know, you're trying to simultaneously always as a team, no matter what stage you're in, to win now and also win for the future. But Pittsburgh just feels like a team with one foot in, one foot out. We want to pursue Rodgers. We're going to trade Pickens. We want to win now, but we're building for the future. What lane is Pittsburgh in? They're trying to get that best of both worlds. And when you do that, it gets messy. And I get transitional periods, post franchise quarterbacks are generally messy, and Pittsburgh's in that unique position because usually what happens post franchise quarterback is your team completely falls apart. Everyone gets fired. New regime comes in, builds it from the studs up. And Pittsburgh's not in that position. Tomlin's still here. They're still competitive as a wild card contending team in the post Ben years. So they're kind of in this weird spot most teams don't find themselves right after their franchise quarterback is gone. And so there is no maybe traditional blueprint to just, do this because now we're in reset mode. And Pittsburgh is in a little different camp right now. So I get all that, but I don't know. It's just felt messy. That's a good way to frame it. It just has felt messy with the way this roster has been built and constructed and what the intent for this team is. And I'm just looking for maybe a little more clarity.
How much do you think Art Rooney II just stood on the sidelines while this went down with Pickens?
I don't want to say stood on the sidelines. Anytime you're trading a player of Pickens' value and importance, I think your ownership has to sign off and have some level of input on that. I doubt you had to twist Rooney's arm too much to, again, convince anybody of why Pickens should no longer be a Steeler for a guy that has been, difficult, not always been professional. I don't think he stood on the sidelines, but I'm sure there wasn't much of a conversation and pushback on if the reporting is true of Tomlin being the catalyst for the trade. It sounds like everyone was kind of quickly on board with the idea.
What do you think Mike Tomlin is going to say? Hopefully I think tomorrow is when he's going to speak after practice. He's surely going to be asked about the George Pickens trade. How we gloss that over?
In typical Tomlin fashion,
made what's best for the team, business decision.
We wish George well.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, it's not going to be anything. It won't be a revelation, I'm sure, from it.
I wonder if he'll get asked, what is the plan?
What do you think his answer will be?
It'll be a non-answer, obviously, but it's one of those things you can't get an answer if you don't ask the question.
Right. Do you think this team truly is confident in what they have internally, and they're not going to necessarily make that bigger, weightier outside move?
No, I don't see how they can. I don't.
But they drafted Roman Wilson in the 3rd round for a reason. They liked him a whole lot to take him there, and there's nothing. He's had nothing to validate that, but there's been nothing to necessarily invalidate that.
Sure,
just 'cause he's been hurt.
Sure, but I mean, there's a lot to see still. A lot of hopium attack. Look, I would love nothing better for him to come out and have a 50, 60 catch season.
But if you add somebody, I mean, if their intent is to see if Wilson can do that, then they probably don't want to add somebody because they want to give Roman Wilson the chance to do that and not bury him back on the depth chart again.
Right. So then you're coming down to you traded George Pickens away for your Roman Wilson lottery ticket.
Yeah. But from their standpoint, this is a guy they liked, drafted in the 3rd round last year, and he's healthy now, and they may think that we're going to roll with a guy that we drafted for this reason to come in and eventually start for us and make some plays. So this is a team. How many times did Mike Tomlin say last year, kind of chiding the media of, you guys keep saying we need a receiver. We're good. We got Scotty Miller. We got Van Jefferson. They can make some plays. And they were kind of, even though it was clear they were still looking at receivers and just missing out on some of those guys, but publicly, Mike Tomlin is very much like, we believe in our guys. And could that be happening again?
Hey, look, I'm not discounting Calvin Austin III. I think he had a great developmental season, but I think we know the ceiling on Calvin Austin now too.
Yeah, he's a number 3. He's not a starter every down number 2.
Right. And Ben Skoronek's special teams and how much more mileage, what's left in the Robert Woods tank, and there's going to be huge questions about the wide receiver depth chart moving through the rest of the summer.
Yeah, we shall see what their feelings are on Roman Wilson. I think they'll probably have to go through OTAs and just see how he looks. I know it's only OTAs, but I don't know how many teams are trying to trade receivers right now in spring ball when they want to evaluate their own rosters. And if they have injuries, they don't want to be put in a tough position. Could Pittsburgh sign a free agent? Potentially. But I think it's probably a little more right now about evaluating their own guys as opposed to rushing out and going out there to make a big receiver addition.
All right. Alex, we got the results are in from the Steelers 2025 mock draft contest that we run on the site every year. And shout out to our own David O for scoring that monstrosity once again. That's a hard undertaking when you have all these things coming in various ways, shape, and form. But Derek Harmon, we had 77 qualified entries in this thing. Derek Harmon was on all 77 of the 50 player list, and all 77 people had him in the first round as well too. So good on the people for that. 67 of the 67 of the 77 had Caleb Johnson mocked to the Steelers in their list of 50 players. 50 of those people had him in the right round. 0 people had Jack Sawyer in their list of 50 player list. 65 of the 77 had Waya Black. Only 6 people had him in the right round, the 5th round. 70 of the 77 had Will Howard. Only 1 person had him in the 6th round. Carson Bruner, the free space on the bingo card. Only 46 of 77 people had him on their list of 50, and 28 of those 46 had him in the right round, and 0 people had Dante Kent on that list of 50 players there. So we ended up having a tie for first place due to the tiebreaker of where Ty Robinson was drafted. So we've got all that info up on the site on SteelersDepot.com. If you want to look at results, or if you want to question them, we'll give 24 hours, a little bit more than 24 hours to question them, question the results and all like that before we pay out the winners. So congrats to everybody that entered again. Kind of a unique situation because this team went into the let's see, did they officially had 6 picks on the board going into the draft, and obviously picked up 1 during the draft. So that makes it a little bit different kind of a challenge that way there. But 2 players overall, nobody who entered the contest and had them on the list of 50.
We would have hired anybody who put Dante Kent in their mock draft contest, because that one was out of left field for sure. So yeah, thank you to everyone who participated, and congrats to our winners.
And thanks to David O once again for scoring that monstrosity there.
Absolutely. All right, Dave, some other loose ends to tie up before we start closing out today's show. The NFL schedule will officially release next Wednesday, May 14th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Often gets leaked out beforehand, but we know that the NFL will announce the international games the day before. It's going to be Tuesday morning on Good Morning Football, and so we'll know the exact date and opponent for the Pittsburgh Steelers Ireland game in Dublin at Croke Park. And so that has been rumored for the Packers for a while. There's been a lot more speculation recently. It'll be the Minnesota Vikings, but we will know for sure come Tuesday morning.
All right, we'll have to get up bright and early for that, and we'll have that as soon as that comes out. One other thing about the Pickens thing here, according to Jeff Howell of the Athletic, and I enjoy Jeff Howell. I think he does a great job. I think you do as well too. I think he does well. At one point, what was he, a Patriots beat writer or whatnot? And anyway, he's been around for a while. Is obviously with the Athletic now. He had an article the other day. The Athletic polled some teams around the league to gauge the general buzz around the availability of a talent like Pickens and whether they would consider trading for him. They were less than enthused. The quote that we have here: some teams polled by the Athletic at the time laughed at the idea of inviting Pickens into their locker room for any price, let alone a second-day draft pick. Anonymous teams said via Hal there wasn't a lot of interest in talking with the Steelers about a trade. How much bullshit is in that? How much truth to that? How much? Where do you come in on Hal's report?
I'm sure there's some truth to it. I think your teams sort of just sit there and say, we've watched from afar and seen all the crap that's gone on with George Pickens. And there were, I think, some of those concerns coming out of Georgia as well. Some people have said that's why he fell. I don't know if that's the reason why he fell to the second. Remember, he was coming off a torn ACL, barely played his last year, came in, I think, very late in that Georgia championship run and made a couple catches, but he basically had that season lost. That's probably the bigger reason why he fell, more so than some of the personality, quote unquote, character stuff with him. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's some teams that just sit there and say, we're not going to try to infuse that in our locker room. It's not going to go well. We don't feel like we have the infrastructure to handle that. And it's just too volatile and potentially could blow up on our faces. So yeah, I'm sure there's truth to it.
I agree. I don't know if it is. Do you think it's to the degree that he's kind of painting this thing as?
I don't know. I don't know how many teams he's referring to, how many teams responded more positively. I just don't have enough information there. And some will sit there and say that, Alex, you can't criticize the return. The market may not have been big, and the Cowboys gave you the best offer, and they got, Omar Khan got Pittsburgh, got Dallas up their offer from a fourth to a third, and you know you just can't criticize that. And to that, I say, well, you don't have to trade George Pickens. No one is forcing you to do that. If the offer wasn't good enough, before the draft, you sit there and say, yeah, that's a decent offer, Dallas, but we're going to stick with what we have. And so, this is it's a false choice to say, well, you have to trade him because that's the best offer and the pool was limited and Dallas was giving you the best offer out there. The alternative can be just, we're going to keep George Pickens. And so, that's my viewpoint. Now, some will say that Pittsburgh was destined and was always going to trade George Pickens, and maybe that's true, but when you put yourself in that corner of we have to trade this guy, again, you back yourself into corners, into these absolutes of we have to trade this guy, we have to do this thing, and that's when you start making some mistakes. And I'm not saying this is a mistake, but there's certainly, I think, some critiques and some questions to be had about the deal.
All right. Okay, where else from here? Anywhere?
That's basically all I have, Dave. If there's any other late breaking news, feel free to jump in. If not, we can get to some read emails, close out today's show, and get ready for day one of rookie minicamp.
Yeah, looking forward to that for sure. And I don't even think I think the undrafted free agents will official get signed today. So those should come out through the transaction wire within a couple of days here, and then all the signing bonuses we'll get the numbers on all that there. So really, that's kind of one of the things I'm waiting on to get a good idea of the salary cap situation for this team. I've got a good idea of what it will be based on the rookie contract projections, and just need to fine tune it with all the bonus amounts and all. Let us go to Chris Warren here. He says, I get the sense that many fans and media members alike tend to discount how much the concept of leverage plays into contract and trade negotiations. Had the team drafted an early wide receiver, it might have diminished the Steelers' leverage in eventually moving Pickens. Now we have Dulac saying that the Steelers won't trade for another wide receiver, but might the Steelers be intentionally giving beat writers that impression so that other teams don't know how badly they'd love to trade for another wide receiver? He says, not every trade Omar Khan orchestrates can be absolute Chase Claypool type fleecing, but Khan is tough, shrewd, and very, very much understands the importance of leverage. So what do you think about his whole thing about here with leverage being associated with this?
Yeah, I mean, I can understand, Pittsburgh holding firm, and if their reporting is true, they got Dallas to come up. Now, some will sit there and say, a third round pick next year can kind of be viewed as a fourth rounder. That's kind of how future picks get looked at. And what if Dallas's selection is a late third rounder? That's a pick, 97. Then it's a third, but it's butting up against that fourth round territory. Of course, it could also be pick 65 overall. It could be an early third. And there's a different way to look at that. Time will tell ultimately, but I just saw the value in keeping Pickens for now. And even knowing you were going to lose him, it was going to give you the best chance to have a really potent offense in 2025. For the other leverage stuff, I don't know if a Dulac chat comment's going to be the thing that is used as a weapon to try to leverage that. I think teams will realize if Pittsburgh is calling for a receiver, the Steelers need a receiver, and Pittsburgh will have a tough time as they did last year.
Didn't Jerry Dulac just recently say they weren't trading George Pickens?
Did he? I don't know. Somebody even sure what Dulac's commentary was, but I'm sure that's true then.
All right, John Mazza writes in, greetings from Utah, second-time emailer. I'm only mentioning my name is John Mazza so Dave can pronounce it. All right, thanks for the mammoth shout outs the other day. Let's see. Quick one on Pickens being a problem, and I agree he was. Do you and Alex personally think that he would have been a problem if Rodgers signs leadership and if he got him the ball where he could catch it? Also, with GP gone, you think DK Metcalf will take number 14? Who knows? Has the Steelers announced that DK's in 4, and have they been selling jerseys yet?
I'm sure they have. I don't know what's all in the Steelers shop right now, but I'd be pretty surprised if it hadn't been. So
once they announce and start selling, it's kind of hard to. And once the players, I guess, sign kind of that NFL, I don't know what is that organization? Not PA, but the I don't know, whatever the one where they get the royalties from the uniforms and all like that. If all of that is signed, sealed, and delivered with him taking 4, and he decided to change, it seems like he would have to buy out the remaining inventory and move forward that way. So I'll have to double check how official is official with the DK, but I wouldn't think that the Steelers would put it out there and potentially sell uniforms of number 4 if he was to turn around and switch 14, but we'll see. What do you think about do you think Pickens would have been a problem had Rodgers signed because of the leadership and play and yada yada yada?
I get that. I mean, I understand the perspective of is that a powder keg, and we had those conversations off and on. A couple months ago, what would it look like with Rodgers and Metcalf and Pickens? But again, are you dictating your roster based on Aaron Rodgers' wishes? A guy who is not even signed yet, and if he does, will probably only be in Pittsburgh for 1 year. Now, granted, George Pickens was only going to probably be in Pittsburgh for one more year or two, but I don't know, Dave. I just hope that's not the case because again, that's Aaron Rodgers dictating your entire roster, and I just hope Pittsburgh is not in that position.
Mike Shorter writes in, gents, is it fair to say that the Steelers have a coach and player development issue under this regime? Production out of our draft classes has been poor. There's been several uncorrected and overly tolerated player maturity issues. What players have developed under this regime, like you saw with Hines Ward, Aaron Smith, Brett Kiesel, Ben Roethlisberger, James Harrison, etc.? What coaches have developed to form the Tomlin coaching tree? I'm not going to get into the whole Tomlin coaching tree debate. I mean, I think pretty much kind of, speaks for itself there. That's a topic, an ongoing topic for another time there. But look, the evaluation and development under this regime, specifically, really let's even say, rolling back into Kevin Colbert final several years as well, too. I get less upset about players after the 4th round, and really technically after the 3rd round. I mean, they've done okay, but I mean, just in recent time here, the whole Kenny Pickett thing. Obviously, George Pickens is gone after 3 seasons because you can't as he said, can't manage the maturity issues there. Look at DeMarvin Leal situation. I think Keanu Benton has played okay. He didn't take the step that I wanted him to take last season. Hopefully that changes. Look at Broderick Jones. I mean, I think you had so many words wrote in a post this morning. He's on the verge of being a legitimate bust candidate here pretty soon. He's really got to turn it around here. You look just at the first rounders as a whole over the last several years since TJ Watt. How many of those guys have had their fifth year options picked up? Yeah, you got, you got some plus guys in there like Nick Herbig, Alex Highsmith obviously ended up turning out to be a fine pick overall. Who else? Alex. I mean,
The tight ends have developed the Frymouth at Darnell Washington.
yeah. I guess largely, but would you agree that largely in the last 5, 6, 7 years that it certainly is okay to question the scouting and development at large when it comes to this organization?
Yes, absolutely. It's not been good enough, and that's been clear. And just briefly on the Broderick Jones comments, I mean, I just say that bust comment in the sense of if he has a bad 2025, this is a make or break year, and Jones can go in either direction. He could have a great season, and maybe he just needed some time, and maybe going back to left tackle will help a little bit. We'll see. This is truly make or break for Broderick Jones. But I had the tweet yesterday, Dave. From 2019 to 2022, Pittsburgh drafted 11 players in rounds 1 through 3. Only 3 of those saw a second contract in Pittsburgh. Pat Frymouth, Alex Highsmith, and Deontay Johnson, who was traded midway through that second deal. Those who didn't, Kenny Pickett, George Pickens, DeMarvin Leal, who technically is on roster, but I'm going to assume he's not going to get a second-year, multi-million-dollar contract. Najee Harris, Kendrick Green, Chase Claypool, Devin Bush, Justin Lane. And so that is a poor outcome, poor results overall. Now, that is the Kevin Colbert, the end of his era. And things maybe look a little more promising under Omar Khan, but we're still jury out on some guys like, of course, Broderick Jones and Benton, as you said, didn't quite take that leap. Who's going to get this? Who's on pace to get a second contract from Khan's classes right now? It's not abundantly clear. There is no slam dunk. This guy is definitely going to be sticking around for a long, long time. Maybe Porter, maybe Benton, maybe Washington, but we'll see.
A lot of that will be decided this year.
Yep.
100%. But you can't slam dunk say it, right? Especially when it comes to high value.
Right. Now, to be fair to Khan, none of these guys are even eligible to sign right now. So as you said, this year will kind of determine that, but there is no slam dunk obvious. This guy's definitely going to be locked up in Pittsburgh long term. So regardless, the point is Pittsburgh's results recently have been poor in the draft, and they must get better.
This one from Jonathan Ammerman. This offseason, this year has been odd. Seems like this year has been an odd combination of exciting and frustrating. With GP Outdoor, one of my favorite players on the team, and Aaron Rodgers still not signed, we are in this very odd limbo land. Look, you're not going to get any pushback from myself, and definitely not from Alex Kozora on that term there. But thinking about our rookie minicamp, he says, what if Will Howard just lights it up over the next few days? What if he and Roman Wilson seem to have a magical connection from the jump? Sometimes seeing is believing. You don't really know what you have until the player takes the field. Is there any chance that Will Howard seriously impresses and the Steelers just choose to go into training camp without Aaron Rodgers? He says, for Rodgers, I was first bummed that we didn't get Justin Fields, then I accepted the idea of a fun season with Rodgers and the 2 twin towers at wide receiver. But now I've soured on Rodgers, especially with Pickens out the door. I'd rather see what we have in Howard and either see that he could be the guy or prepare for a quarterback in round 1 next year. Good email. First and foremost, Roman Wilson will not be part of the rookie mini camp, so we're not going to be able to write, how Roman Wilson is looking during the rookie mini. I wish there was some sort of rule, and you and I have talked about this in the past as well too, right, Alex? About, man, should guys that even though they took part in maybe rookie minicamp last year and OTAs and whatnot, there ought to be some designation of some of these guys being able to take part in a rookie minicamp, much like the 5 uh, guys under contract that aren't rookies are this year.
Yeah, I mean, there are carve-outs. That's why some of those first-year guys are able to. I guess it's based off of accrued seasons or credited seasons based on if you're on the 53 or not. Maybe it should be on a snap count basis. If you didn't play a single regular season snap the year before, maybe you should be eligible even if you were on the roster. Now, Wilson did play 5 snaps, but there probably is worthwhile conversation on expanding the opportunity for these guys to get it in practice.
Yeah, I agree there. Now, as far as the whole Will Howard thing, look, I would love nothing more than every other post over the next 3 days to be can't believe how much Will Howard is progressing. But even if that something like that were to happen, Mike Tomlin would be sure to tamp it down, say this is all about information gathering and how these guys receive and distribute information and leadership and everything that goes along with that. Because let's be clear here. This is football in shorts before football in shorts. This is free football in shorts season. So I find it hard to imagine that no matter how good or bad Will Howard is during these next 3 days of practice that they're going to say, nah, you know what, Aaron, we're good.
Yeah, listen, I'm as excited about Will Howard as anybody. I talked him up as much as probably anybody that you could hear from pre-draft, and so I'm excited to see what he can do. I think there'll be some buzz. Would not surprise me if he got some positive reports this 3-day weekend. But he is not going to impact Aaron Rodgers any which way, and it is very hard to see a scenario in which Howard is no better than the number 3 quarterback on this roster come week 1. Even if Rodgers doesn't sign for whatever reason, they'll probably add another veteran, be it Kirk Cousins, be it some other veteran Mason Rudolph-like player, which puts Howard as the number 3. This team does not want to have to play a 6th-round rookie this year in 2025. So it just really is no impact on what Rodgers will or will not do in Pittsburgh.
All right, one last one. Jason Higgins says wide receiver short list missing a name. I think we are looking at this wrong. The words replacement for George Pickens keeps keeps getting thrown around. Something to consider. DK is the Pickens replacement, and the replacement we are looking for is the number 2 spot that Calvin Austin seems to hold last season. The name I think should be considered is Juwan Jennings, entering the final year of a 2-year extension and is the dog that Tomlin seems to like. Tough as nails and makes plays. Just something to ponder. Thank you for the work you guys do, Jason. I guess that's kind of fair. In other words, instead of looking for, and look, I can't reiterate, I don't think you're going to find a 1-for-1 replacement for George Pickens, but he says, should it be framed as DK is the Pickens replacement, and the replacement this team might now be looking for is the number 2 spot that Calvin Austin seemed to hold last season?
Yeah, I saw a comment like that yesterday. I get the framing of it, but I just look at what you actually had and not kind of this
Right.
squint. And if you twist it a little bit, you can, well, you've actually upgraded on both spots because Metcalf is an upgrade over Pickens, and whoever they add is an upgrade over Van Jefferson last year. But you had Pickens and Metcalf. That was the expectation. And now that's kind of how I judge, who's replacing Pickens, just by what Pittsburgh actually had, not just kind of this 4D chess type of viewpoint. So I get the thought, but that's not how I interpret the roster. I look at based off of who they actually had, and then the replacements from there.
What is you think they're what you think the 49ers are going to be interested in letting go of Juwan Jennings?
I don't know. It's kind of been a mess over there in San Francisco. They got Ayuk coming off the injury, and Pearsall made some plays, but he was limited after that crazy off-field thing last year. I've been a big Juwan Jennings fan, but I don't know what his status is. I don't know if the Niners are trying to shed more pieces. They lost a lot on the roster this year, this offseason. I'm not sure if they're looking to part off Jennings.
Their top 6 wide receivers, according to our lads right now, are Brandon Ayuk, who's obviously coming off of the injury, Ricky Pearsall, who they drafted last year, Juwan Jennings. The next 3, in no particular order, they went out and added Demarcus Robinson, right? So they drafted Jordan Watkins in the 4th round, and they have Jacob Cowing as well, too. What do you think their fan base would think about this team trading Juwan Jennings?
Yeah, probably wouldn't love it for a team coming off a poor season, bunch of injuries, won 6 games last year. They're trying to bounce back. They have a roster that could probably do it. So, I don't know, is he a free agent thereafter this year, Jennings? Is that the leader said 2-year deal?
I can't remember the deal on him. Let me look real quick before we get out of
I think so. I
here.
think that would make sense. I think from what the reader said and from my recollection.
He's got void years attached, and this is technically his final year.
Okay, so maybe someone to talk about in the offseason of 2026.
I would be look. I'm a Juwan. We've mentioned Juwan Jennings several times over the course of, I don't know, 18, 24 months or whatever. I'm a fan of his. To me, it doesn't seem plausible
Yeah, not
this
banking on it.
offseason.
Yep, we'll see, but not banking on it.
All right, got through some emails there. Anything else you'd like to add? Any breaking news coming in?
No,
No white smoke coming out of the South Side for Aaron Rodgers.
not seeing it now. We'll be back on Monday to talk about rookie minicamp and go from there.
All right, great Seinfeld show today, hour and a half here. So anyway, we'll be back on Monday recapping the Steelers 2025 rookie minicamp. Whatever else news comes along, we'll make sure to be on top of that. Recap what all Mike Tomlin had to say at any point during this weekend as well too. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter /X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions that way. So until Monday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.